Welcome back to .NET Rocks. This is Carl Franklin.
And this is Richard Campbell.
And, conference season.
Yeah, here we are again.
We should talk about all the conferences that we're going to be at. I know we do that from time to time, but we're coming to Prague.
Here's my November, buddy. You'll love this. I'm actually speaking at PASS at the SQL Server Conference in Seattle. Due to the fact that I was a guest on a SQL Server podcast where I talked about how to build trusted teams, and apparently that's a thing. So there's a talk I'm doing at PASS.
Great.
Then, it's good fun, and certainly stuff I've talked about before. Then going off to DevReach in Bulgaria.
Nice.
The Telerik show is back, doing its thing. So going to be over there doing a little history of .NET and maybe make a couple of shows. Then I'm jumping out to a code camp in Chisinau in Moldova. So put another rare country under the belt. Yeah, I'm very excited to be able to go there and take a look.
That's been on your bucket list for a long time.
It has.
Moldova.
Mostly because they make amazing brandy, but that's just me. Actually serious about winemaking too. It's a great place. I'm very excited to go there. And then you and I are together for the Update Conf in Prague.
Yep. I will probably join you next year at DevReach in Bulgaria. That was a lot of fun. We had so much fun there.
Back in the old days, Yeah, it's interesting to have it back in the swing again. And then, of course, the big show is the first week of December. That's DevIntersection in Las Vegas. And I think by the time this show's out, it will be announced that we are hosting the Microsoft Connect event at DevIntersection.
That is so cool.
So Connect was this show that we've been to a couple of times, based in New York, but primarily a streaming event talking about new technology. And they have reorganized things. Things are different now. And so they asked us if we could do the streaming part of it. Scott Guthrie, Scott Hanselman, a bunch of other great folks at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. So if you want to meet those guys in person, you can come out to the event, devintersection.com.
Absolutely. Well, let's roll the music for Better Know Framework.
Awesome. All right, dude. What do you got? Tell me it's cool.
It's pretty cool. Every once in a while, there's so many apps in the app stores that you just can't browse them anymore. You just got to hear about them and try them.
Yeah, it's kind of out of control, really.
It is out of control, but this is one that I think everybody's going to go out and buy. It costs $5.
$5?
But it's so cool. I know, it's either a latte or Tiny Scanner.
Oh.
That's right. Tiny Scanner is the name of the app. And we'll put links to the Android and the iOS versions. So you basically take a picture of a document and it turns it into a PDF. But what it does is it automatically rotates, crops, and deskews what you took a picture of.
Oh, interesting. So it's kind of there's an app called Office Lens. Office Lens does that. Does a great job of that, actually. Yeah.
I have it. It works. It's great. You don't always have a scanner. A scanner is kind of a pain in the butt. You have to tote it around, and this is you just take a picture, PDF. And it's all lined up, like usually you take a picture on an angle and it automatically skews it and corrects the skew.
Right.
It's so cool.
It's very interesting.
There it is.
Okay.
Tiny Scanner. Know it, learn it, love it. Get it.
Cool.
Who's talking to us today, Richard?
Grabbed a comment off of show 1581, the one we did in September of 2018 with Mr. Donovan Brown. Talk a little Azure DevOps. That was part of the big announcement of them rebranding to this Azure DevOps moniker and sort of trying to get outside, trying to talk about a pipeline that looks beyond just Visual Studio.
Right.
And got a bunch of great comments on the show, but one of them comes from Peter Karangatis, and I hope I got your name correctly there. He said, I love this episode. I'm very passionate about DevOps, and I'm constantly looking for innovative ways to overcome the inevitable barrier that exists between developers and the operations side of things. As was said in the episode, many companies set goals that cause division between those two groups by offering rewards to operation for maintaining 100% uptime, which discourages change, and rewards to developers for delivering value through new software, which encourages change. Instead, organizations need to focus on ways to align the two groups to add value through responsible innovation.
Yeah. Well said.
Can't argue with that. It's about providing value to customers. That's what it's about. So definitely.
That's your job.
Yeah. Get everyone aligned on those same goals and see if those barriers don't break down just a little bit. So Peter, thank you so much for your comment. A copy of Music to Code By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or via any of our social media, because we publish every show to Facebook, because we don't publish to Google Plus anymore because it doesn't exist. And we read it there and put it on the show. We'll send you a copy of Music to Code By.
Absolutely. And definitely follow us on Twitter. He's at Rich Campbell. I'm at Carl Franklin. Please send us a tweet. We turn them into PDFs, print them out, and fax them to each other.
I don't have a fax machine anymore. Thank goodness. 1979 called, and once it's hardware back.
Yeah, and then we put them through our OCR and
rescan them.
Okay. Let's bring on Matt. Mattias Koch is his name. He likes to be called Matt. He loves clean code. Also API design and software architecture. He started with Nuke in 2017 after searching for the perfect build system for one of his open source projects. And at JetBrains, he's working as a developer advocate for the .NET department. And you can follow him on Twitter at MATKOCH87. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, nice being here.
Yeah, great to have you.
Thanks.
So this is pretty cool. I went and looked at Nuke, and the first question I had was, oh geez, another build system. But this is different. What makes Nuke different?
Well, it's unfortunately not, or partly not the name, because it still follows this, naming pattern with KE at the end. But the make style was already occupied by another build system. So I thought like Nuke is like new make tool, something like that.
Nice.
But what makes it different is, it's really like 100% C#.
Yeah.
It integrates as a simple C# console application. So I know many approaches out there. I certainly don't know about every approach. But many approaches use some kind of scripting, involve some kind of, Rosin utilization, which is cool. But as a user, and I was going through some of those, frameworks myself, from time to time, it is cumbersome to deal with such things. And in a team, basically, you also have to learn about the new tool, and you don't need to learn about a simple console application, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone knows about console application. It's basically the first example everyone does.
So you basically build with console apps in C#.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
That's cool.
That is cool, and it hasn't been done. So what's the benefit of doing that? I mean, it's obvious when you think about it, but let's just go through some of the benefits of using a console app in C#.
Yeah, first of all, this console application can be just a part of your solution like any other project. So you can use your IDE to search for symbols, for instance. And that's the next point, actually, because they are actual symbols. So there's no work done to make this build project, let's call it this way, work with your existing tooling. So you won't have to bother with new extensions for IntelliSense or debugging, navigation, and so on. That is, everything comes out of the box, uses the native IDE support. Also the NuGet package management. So if you're depending on some other NuGet packages, like for instance, JSON.NET is always the best example. If you need that, you just add it to your project the usual way. There's nothing special about it. And in the end, I mean, that was the big goal for me, to have a build system that is approachable to everyone in a team, and that no one needs to learn a new language or, get to know about a tool or install an extension.
It seems like such a natural way to do a build that it makes me wonder, has it been done before? Are there other build systems that you can use your .NET language of choice and just make console apps?
I'm not really sure. I know there are some build systems out there which also utilize the simple C# project. I was actually coming from the Cake direction. So when I was searching, Cake catched my eye. Sorry. And, but at one point, I had the feeling that, well, there was actually a very simple reason why I started with Nuke at this point. And, everything about being a simple console application, that was just a side product, actually, from following, a different approach. And, the reason why I was, looking for another or started with Nuke at this point was the support for third-party command line tools. So, for instance, like MS-Build, NuGet, and so on, so that you can call this from your build script or build project. And at this point, all the manipulation of argument invocations was done manually. So the implementation. And maybe we can talk about this later, but this was one idea of mine to generate such code for implementing third-party command line tools.
Yeah, it's sort of, I mean, when you're in C#, you have access to everything. It just makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And how exactly is the syntax put together?
Well, that is one thing some people are a little bit crazy about at first. But a single target, let's say a build step, is actually implemented using a property. So you start writing something like target, which is actually the type of the property, then the name of the target. So at this point, also notice this is not longer a string. As for the name of the target, so we don't need to deal with magic strings,
right?
And then follows an expression-bodied lambda arrow, and after that comes a delegate. And this delegate only is used for initializing a Fluent syntax. So from there on, you would call methods like execute, which receives an action, so that you can define that this target, let's use compile for instance. You could say execute, then lambda arrow again, and you say let's call MS-Build, and that's the implementation basically for this particular target.
And let's just define what a target is.
Well, the target is just a single build step. So,
a build step.
Yeah, build automation basically includes steps like cleaning the repository from all the files, compiling code and packaging stuff together and deliver it to some endpoint.
Cool.
Things like that.
All right. So you have a Fluent syntax, which is this dot that dot this dot that, and which is very cool. I'm a huge Fluent fan.
Yeah, me too.
And it all starts from the main method of a console app?
Yeah, right. So like I said, it is a simple console application, so we need to define a main method. And that main method is, you actually don't need to worry about that too much, but it is used to define the default target for the build project. So MS-Build, for instance, has a similar thing. Inside those CSproj or target files, I think the extensions can be named like anything you want. But usually you can define at top level in the root tag, you can define the default target. Usually I think it's built, and that's basically the same thing in Nuke, just type safe.
Right.
I'm still trying to figure out the distinction between Nuke and Cake here, because don't they both go down the Fluent syntax path?
The Fluent syntax is actually, I got very inspired by Cake. Yes. Beside the Fluent, we do have some new stuff there. We have a call that is called requires, and that also receives a lambda, and you can mention a field in that call. So think of a target, for instance, that is called push, right? And for push to work, we usually need to have an API key.
Right.
And, so for the push target, we could express that we require the API key, the field, to be not null.
Right.
And this require call will cause the execution engine to check this condition prior to execution. So instead of executing clean, compile, pack, and then push, and then you realize, okay, there's no API key. Instead, you get the error message right up front before anything was executed.
All right. I love that because you're saving people time, right? You check those requires up front. So answer me this. If the first require fails, will you check the subsequent requires?
I think not. No.
Okay. So I mean, you still have this trap of, all right, you were missing this API key. All right, you put the API key in. Build again. Oh, now you're missing this API key. Like I do love when you can call something like that and it goes, here's all the things that are wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, now that we're talking about this, I do remember talking to Gary Ewan Park about Cake in 2016, but I never used it. But yeah, I have forgotten that's kind of a DSL.
Well, you know, at the server, you can go, okay, C# DSLs, but you can make DSLs very different from each other too. So I'm keen to sort of get this. Mattias, you're clearly passionate about you doing something fundamentally different here that maybe folks coming at this have the same problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I had the project you initially mentioned where I was looking for a good build system. That project actually used Fluent syntax to another level, and
a little too fluent, maybe.
This was almost
too fluent.
that was almost too much. Yeah. So one thing I got from that time, it was actually a test framework, or basically a framework to build test frameworks. And one thing I got from this time was to try to integrate with native tooling as early as possible.
Okay.
And I think that's also what Nuke is about.
Don't reinvent the wheel. Use stuff we're already using.
Yeah.
And are you using reflection to do some of this Fluent stuff, or is it all predefined?
Yeah, we are using some certain kind of reflection, yes, for instance, to detect all the targets that are implemented. Mm-hmm. So actually, Nuke also provides a global tool. So the stuff you can install from the .NET Core SDK since version 2.1.300 or something. You can install that global tool. And using that global tool, you can call, for instance, Nuke -help, and this help dialog from the console will tell you all the targets that are actually implemented. Oh, so this is also a big benefit because we can use reflection just to discover implemented targets. We also can do this for, like I mentioned, this API key. I think that's also a big thing.
Absolutely.
Because if you want to pass an API key, the only thing you would need to do is to declare a field that's called API key and put an attribute before it, which is called parameter. And this will also show up in the help documentation.
Nice.
That's good.
Hey, Matt, just hold that thought right there for 1 minute while we take a few moments for this very important message.
Hi, this is Richard. The DevIntersection Fall Show this year will be December 3rd to 6th in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand Hotel. The lineup is awesome. Scott Guthrie, Scott Hanselman, Scott Hunter, yes, all the Scotts. But also a ton of great industry speakers for some insight on what's coming up in the world of .NET. You know, Core 3 is bringing client technology like WinForms and WPF into play. Could it be time to migrate your existing desktop apps to this new technology? Come learn more at DevIntersection, December 3rd to 6th in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand. Go to devintersection.com to register and use the code .NETROCKS to get a discount.
All right, we're back. It's .NET Rocks. I'm Carl Franklin. That's Richard Campbell. And that's Mattias Koch, or Matt, as he likes to be called. And we're talking to him about Nuke and the Fluent syntax, the benefits of that. And do we have to use the Fluent syntax?
Actually, yes. So for this to work, I think I never asked myself that question, but Fluent syntax is good to use here. Yes.
Yeah.
But like you said earlier, it can go too far. You can get a little crazy with Fluent syntax.
Yeah. I know what you mean. So the thing is, if a certain build target gets too big, and we're actually doing this inside our build project for the website, so to build the documentation, if something gets too big, you can just extract all the logic, the existing logic, into another class. So you don't really need to keep to stick to that Fluent syntax and implement everything there. You can just extract a new class, implement logic there. We're actually doing this with the web project and using monosessel to discover all the add-on packages, because we're trying to put everything into their own add-on packages, and we're discovering implemented tasks also from those add-on packages and create the documentation from that using monosessel.
And is monosessel actually tied to mono, or will it just run against the .NET Core?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't really know.
How are you using it?
Well, we are using it just for some kind of reflection, actually.
Okay.
So it's just to introspect all those existing NuGet packages, or unwrapping the NuGet packages and then inspecting those .NET assemblies.
And not that the average person is going to care about this, because this is totally under the hood how you do your stuff. But yeah. I think often when people hear mono, they're like, "Ooh, do I want to get involved with the mono framework at all?" But it doesn't matter in this occasion, this situation.
No. This is only part of our personal implementation for the web documentation.
Right. It is the art of being able to parse through a .NET application and figure those sorts of things out.
Yeah, right.
Not an easy problem, actually, to do well these days, it seems.
Not so much, yeah.
No, well, we have too many flavors of .NET, it seems. They don't all work the same.
Yeah.
But it is worth noting, I think, that Nuke allows to use different kind of bootstrapping approaches. Mm-hmm. And so one approach is to use the .NET framework or Mono. Mm-hmm. So it works cross-platform. I think we didn't mention that so far. Or it can also use the .NET Core SDK as bootstrapping.
Interesting.
And that will take care of compiling the build project. So there is a build.ps1 and build.sh file still for the builds bootstrapping, and that will take care of compiling the build project and then executing the build project.
So you do have a choice of what compiler do you want to compile your build system with? Yeah,
there is a choice. I mean, I would still always recommend to use the .NET Core SDK. Yeah. I mean, there's no reason to use the .NET framework, especially since it's evolving quite quickly. I mean, the .NET Core SDK. Yeah. But yeah, from my point of view, the .NET Core SDK tooling is much better in this case.
But, and correct me if I'm wrong here, there's no reason you wouldn't use .NET Core to build your build system to build a .NET standard framework app.
That works.
Yes. And I hope that's an important distinction for some people, because there's lots of folks out there aren't prepared to move to Core for a variety of reasons, starting WinForms, but might want to be able to use this build system. And so, here, get a little .NET Core experience. It's just use it that way. I don't know that you'd want to do your build system with .NET Standard.
Yeah, that's true. We had some reoccurring issues with people, because there is a wizard implemented in that global tool, and that will lead you through the initial setup for a build that should be added to a solution. Right. And there were quite a few people who got confused with the choice between .NET SDK, Core SDK, and .NET Framework, and they used the .NET Framework because they had .NET Framework production code.
Sure.
Right? And so we're actually thinking about removing that and make it a little less discoverable. I mean, the choice for .NET Framework, because usually I think from my experience, it's not really necessary to have that.
Yeah.
Right.
We and this seems to be a transitory time too, right? I mean, .NET Core is going to continue to evolve and get closer to parity with standard. And at some point it's not going to matter. You're going to be able to work either way. That's just not the case today in the fall of 2018.
Yep.
Just not quite there yet.
Yeah.
What about VS Code and the other ways to build .NET these days? Does Nuke play with those?
Yeah, so like I said, extensions are not really necessary. So debugging and refactorings work out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
But for IDEs out there like VS Code or I'm a fan of JetBrains Rider, of course.
For obvious reasons, yes.
We do have additional extensions that will improve the user experience a little more.
Right.
So for instance, in VS Code, you will have a code lens provider that will show you little links to either debug or run a target. In JetBrains Rider or ReSharper for Visual Studio, you would have the execution of a target integrated in the Alt-Enter menu. So whenever you're inside the body of a target, you can just hit Alt-Enter and either execute or debug that target. And you usually also have the choice to include or exclude dependencies. So because that is an important thing, right? If you're we're working on a target and you want to make it work, then usually you have this feedback loop of trying to execute only the single target several times, and these extensions can help you achieving exactly that.
Hey, Richard.
Yeah, buddy.
Guess what time it is now?
It must be that happy time again.
Happy, maybe not. I'm going to go back in time and throw Matt's father off a bridge so he's never born. Then I'm going to come back and play my favorite first-person shooter game, Duke Makem.
Jeez.
Which was followed by Duke Cakem.
That is an opaque reference you're making right there, brother. Just that is. And it started with murdering our guest. There's a path.
I know. When you lead with that, you know, anything will be funny.
Everything's going to be fine after this. No, really.
All right. Well, it's actually time to give away a $200 Amazon gift card, compliments of Progress Telerik, to one lucky member of the .NET Rocks fan club. But first, let me tell you about the most comprehensive developer toolkit for building modern apps on the market today, Telerik DevCraft. With more than 1,100 Telerik.NET and Kendo UI JavaScript components and controls, you can easily build modern, high-performant web, mobile, and desktop apps, as well as chatbots. The toolset also includes reporting solutions, automated testing, and productivity tools, and comes with a range of support options. New this year is a free online training program for all license holders. With this, alongside thousands of demos with source code, comprehensive docs, and a full assortment of Visual Studio templates, you'll be up and running with Progress Telerik and Kendo UI tools in no time. Download a free 30-day trial now at telerik.com/download.
Well, all right, buddy. Who's our winner?
Today's winner, Richard, is Brian Bedard.
Congratulations, Brian. Golf clap for you, sir.
Hope I pronounced your name right, Brian. Sorry if I didn't. But Brian just won a $200 Amazon gift card, compliments of Progress Telerik, just for being a member of the .NET Rocks fan club. And if you'd like to join, go to .NETRocks.com, click on the big Get Free Stuff button, answer a few questions, and join the fan club. We have thousands of members all over the world. In every show, we like to give away stuff from our sponsors. And every December, we give away a $5,000 technology shopping spree to one lucky member of the .NET Rocks fan club. But you got to sign up if you want to win. All right, Matt, it's your turn. If you had $5,000 to spend on technology today, what do you think you'd buy?
I'm not really sure. I actually got everything that I need. So I got my nice little MacBook Pro, the smaller version. I would like to convince Apple to build one that fits more memory, but I guess 5,000 is not enough for that.
Yeah.
So, but the thing that I really like, I'm a big fan of those Anker power banks.
Yes.
They can charge the MacBook one time full with the bigger power banks, and I would probably buy some more of those.
Yeah, like 30 of them?
Well, you got to keep them on a rotating power charge, right? So
yeah.
While your first 5 are being charged, you can use the last one that was being charged and just kind of rotate them. You know, I love those things too.
Anker products are great. But, well, Anker figured out that you can build premium USB stuff, and we will buy it.
Right. The one thing is that it charges. These things charge faster than if you plug them into the wall. How does that work?
Well,
your wall charger has a certain amount of power that it puts out, right? A certain amount of watts.
Yeah.
But these things just crank it up.
Well, they always go to the absolute limit.
I'm still looking forward for them to build a more flexible USB charger. I have one that has the mini USB, the Lightning, and USB-C as output.
Nice.
So that's not an Anker product. And also I would love one of those with a shorter, in a shorter version, just like 30 centimeters or something.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see.
Yeah, they tend to not work well with power strips because they take up 2 spaces.
Yeah. Now I've got my Anker block, which is USB-A, USB-C, has proper power cord on it, and I like that. You only take up one outlet and you have flexibility. Yeah. And that little nice. Not only does that thing charge fast, but it's got 6 ports on it, so it's like in airports you make friends. Yeah. Somebody's hogging the charger with one little plug in it, and you're like, hey, let's all charge and charge fast.
All right, so let's get back to this. So how are third-party tools integrated? MS Build, NuGet, and the like?
So for third-party command line tools, we use some kind of code generation.
Okay.
Because basically the idea of having an object in C# and translating that into a command line invocation is like a problem that can be solved for all command line tools at once, right?
Yeah.
The only thing that differs is the actual metadata about those tools. So for instance, let's pick an example. In MS Build, you can pass the argument /no logo, for instance. We have a JSON specification file that defines no logo as a C# property. So we have this also with initial uppercase letter, no logo. The type of this would be a Boolean, and also we put the information there about what should be added to the command line invocation. So in this case, it's /no logo again. And this works well for all kinds of arguments that can be passed. So for instance, also for setting the targets that should be built by MS Build. In this case, we even hide the information about the separators. So as a user, you don't need to worry about those separators. You just call add targets, for instance. Then you name the first target, like, let's say clean, as string in this case, then comma for a second params string. And then the second, let's use compile. And behind the scenes, this is concatenated using the right separator and is invoked with msbuild.exe.
Nice.
In this case. Yeah.
Nice.
Another big thing we save into those specification files is the official documentation. So, let's say you're on a plane and you don't have internet connection. Okay, planes sometimes have internet connection, but let's say you don't have internet connection. You can just use Nuke to also discover all the APIs that a certain command line tool offers you. So you just hit dot, and via IntelliSense, you get all the documentation for targets, for instance, and you will know, okay, these targets are actually invoked from MS Build, and it will just do its job. Or you don't even need to search for, you can just play the guessing game, right? So if you forget about, okay, how was this called with package analysis, and I don't exactly remember how this was called, you just type analysis, for instance, and it will show up in IntelliSense.
Nice.
Yeah, that's cool. So that works for supported tools. What if a tool isn't supported, like you want to use something that doesn't quite fit yet?
Yeah. So it's usually the same approach as we do. If a tool is not supported, we can write some JSON specification files, and those get passed to the code generator, and this code generator will generate a bunch of code from those specification files. So, for instance, I think for the Docker implementation, which we already offer, we have an amount of generated lines of code. I think it's the source file is more than 5 megabytes, I think, and that gets compiled just for the big goal of providing a nice and clean API. Yeah. So and also for things like Docker, I would like to mention that we have a great tool chain of automatically fetching the original repository, for instance, Docker or the Azure CLI or Kubernetes. We are fetching the original repository, converting information from their repository into our specification files, and those get generated, or those will generate the actual code that is used from the end user.
Okay.
But this is always just this is always just necessary if you really want to have this nice Fluent syntax for manipulating third-party command line invocations. In all other cases, I think it's still possible to just use something like process invocation, and we also have a task for that actually.
Right. The old process. Standard in, standard out.
Start process.
Yeah.
So we've now put all these ingredients together for a build process, and then I guess you compile it, right? It gets built.
Yeah.
What is that? So what does that look like? Anything special in the generation process?
For the code generation.
Yeah.
Well, it depends if it should be an add-on that can be used from other people. Of course, in this case, there would be a dedicated repository which compiles the add-on, and then it gets packed and pushed to NuGet. If you're using, for instance, an internal tool that only exists in a company, in that case, you can just put the specification file into that build project, and the generated code or the code will be generated just before compilation.
Right.
Yeah.
And then is it just part of the project at that point?
At this point, it's just part of the build project.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you actually want to build an add-on that would be shared across projects, it's got to be a bit more complex than that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really great. I'm really proud of the work from my other team member, because we're 2 people working on that. So Sebastian, he's fortunately not available today, but he's basically managing all those third-party add-ons. So like the Azure CI, everything that I mentioned already, and he did a really great job of implementing this chain of actions, because every time, for instance, NSWAG releases a new version, there is a Nuke bot, or this Nuke bot is a dedicated GitHub user account,
right?
And this Nuke bot will automatically create a new pull request for the NSWAG add-on. And if we want to release a new version of our add-on, that complies to the NSWAG release, then we just merge that pull request, and automatically we have a new up-to-date add-on version for the NSWAG.
That's cool. Yeah, and I'm looking on GitHub here. Obviously, you're the principal contributor, but Sebastian's the next one in line. And clearly, the 2 of you have been collaborating for a while here. But he came on a little later, it appears, just looking at the data. You got to a certain point in the project where his particular skills obviously became valuable for dealing with this stuff.
Yeah. Well, he was contributing some stuff in the last year already, but was then busy working on some other things. And as soon as there was some time, he was actually joining, and it's great having also having someone to discuss things, right?
Sure.
Because that is one of the big goals I have in mind, to support all the various use cases people have on their minds. Like if someone, we have a Slack channel for that, and sometimes people are coming and explain their use case, and I'm really keen to provide a good solution to everything that people talk about. Yeah. So, for instance, there are also some ideas that are coming from the community. Just recently, someone was trying to implement their builds in a global tool that gets just installed on the developer machines. And that was just, at first, it was really like confusing because I had to wrap my head around this, but then I started to really see the value in his particular case, and this is just great.
Yeah, it's got to be interesting to be exposed to all the variations of how people want to build their software.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very cool. And I guess it's important to remember you guys both have day jobs too, right? Like this is your side hustle.
It's a side project, yeah. But it's also kind of a little baby that you can see grow. And for me personally, I'm really happy to see this success so far. Also being here on your show, or last year I've been to a conference in Moscow presenting all that stuff, and that is just great to see that if people like it and they get they give feedback and so on, it's a great experience.
Are you looking for more contributors?
Yeah, definitely. And if you wouldn't have said it, I would have totally forgotten. We are definitely looking for contributors. It's always helpful to receive feedback, and if it's just documentation, I mean, that's the usual thing people say. But I'm really interested, or both of us, we're interested in new opinions and thoughts of what could be made better. So like I said, we're really trying hard to satisfy everyone's expectations from a modern build tool.
And just as a guy who looks at a lot of GitHub projects, like I really appreciate that you and Sebastian are pushing issues into the stack as well, and rather than just doing them yourself, and we found out about it later, and the few first-timer options too. So folks who want to get involved, there's some easier, simpler items to pick up and work on.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've got this idea from Scott Henselman back then, and unfortunately, I think there was not a single one that was picked. But maybe after this show gets published, but yeah, I think it's important to give some ideas for people who would like to join us. To start with something easy. That is easy to grasp and easy to implement, and and
easy to put on. But it's got to be simple for you and Sebastian to just go have a cup of coffee, talk about some features, and go work on it. The idea that you're putting them through his issues so that anybody can participate. That's good leadership of an open source project, Matt. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. Great to hear.
So, what's next for you? What's in your inbox?
From Nuke in particular, I think there are two things that I would really like to see. The first is in those extensions, and I think JetBrains Writer will be the first to have a tool window that always visualizes the current dependency graph of the build. We actually have that currently already, but it's in the background, it's using Mermaid.js, and it will generate an HTML report that will just open in your browser. But having that in the IDE would be just great, actually. I mean, I would really, really like this. It's some kind of little toy, maybe, but I think, we can do this. And the second thing would probably also be a Visual Studio extension to have something like CodeLens in VS Code, the CodeLens, the same in Visual Studio.
Yeah.
But I think this was only released like a couple of months ago. So and the API from our point of view was not really convenient to use, at least at this current point. So I'm not sure. I mean, maybe the issue here was that we don't have the semantic model in the second process for the code lens provider. And that was possible in Rider, for instance. And let's see, either we will stick to just text processing, which would also work. We are doing the same thing in VS Code. But having the semantic model would be better, of course.
Awesome.
But those two things are basically the next step.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you. This is great. And by the way, the website is nuke.build, and you can get to GitHub from there. But there's some really great screenshots and some. It's a good website.
Because I got to think build Nuke would be a very different thing. We shouldn't do that.
It's never going to get unfunny, is it?
Never.
You made the choice, Matt. You went with that name. I totally get it, but boy, it's going to cause some trouble.
Yeah, at this point, I didn't know what dimensions it would take on. And now I can't go back.
Nope, so you're in there.
Not so easy.
Yeah,
Well, I gotta go because I gotta kick up a beer and play some Duke Cakem. Thanks again, Matt. It's been great.
It's been really great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you bet. And we'll see you next time on .NET Rocks. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Pwop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time.
Got transmitter banned by the FCC.